There are two words that hold more creative power than every prayer you've ever spoken, every ritual you've performed, and every spiritual practice you've ever tried combined. When you truly understand what I am means, you will realize that you've been sitting on a throne while begging for scraps. You see, you have been deceived. For centuries, we've been taught to worship God as something separate from ourselves by organized religion. We've been conditioned to believe that divinity is out there, in churches, in holy books, in distant heavens, anywhere but where it actually resides. This separation is the greatest deception ever sold to humanity. And it has kept humanity powerless, begging for what we already possess. When Jesus declared, "Before Abraham was, I am," he was not making a statement about his personal timeline. He was revealing the timeless truth of divine identity, the eternal presence that exists before all form, all history, all limitation. The same I am that spoke through Jesus is the exact same I am that is conscious within you right now. Reading these words, thinking these thoughts. Think about it this way for a moment. When you say, I am happy, or I am tired, or I am successful, what is the I that claims to be these things? Strip away your name, your roles, your history, your body, your thoughts, and what remains? That unchanging awareness, that constant sense of I, that is the divine presence within you. It's not personal to you, it is universal consciousness expressing itself as you. But here is where it gets even more profound. And why understanding this completely begins to change and alters how you create your reality from this point forward. There is a tremendous creative power in declaration. Every time you follow I am with anything, you are not just describing yourself, you are commanding reality to conform to your declaration. The ancient sages understood this when they recorded God's name as I am that I am. This wasn't just a name, it was a revelation of the creative mechanism of existence itself and of its very nature. Your consciousness, your sense of I, your sense of being, is not a passive observer of reality. It is the active creator of it. When you declare, I am broke, you're not stating a fact, you're issuing a divine order. When you say, I am lonely, you're not describing your situation. Really what you're doing is you're commanding the universe to deliver more experiences of separation. The power that creates galaxies operates through your conscious declarations, whether you realize it or not. And the vast majority of humanity does not realize this. They are vast asleep to this power within them. And so they unconsciously create their world around them. This is why the mystics throughout history have been so careful with their words. They understood that consciousness is not a small personal thing happening inside your head. They understood that really it is the fundamental creative force of the universe, and you are its current point of expression. Your thoughts aren't just mental activity, they are divine activity shaping the fabric of your experience. But of course, most people completely misunderstand how this divine mechanism actually works, even even a lot of spiritual people and even so-called spiritual teachers. And this leads us to the biggest mistake that all these people make: the mirror of consciousness. This is what trips most people up trying to understand their divine nature. They think that consciousness reflects reality, when in actuality, reality reflects consciousness. Your inner state is not the cause of your outer world, but rather your inner state is the cause of your outer world. And this reversal of understanding really changes things. When you look in a physical mirror, for example, you don't try to change your reflection by touching or manipulating the glass. You change instead what is in front of the mirror, yourself. Your external reality works exactly the same way. It is a perfect mirror, and rather a bit of a dumb mirror, reflecting back the sum total of your conscious assumptions about yourself, about others, about things, about concepts, declarations about who and what you are and what your experience is like. And it does this even if these declarations are not to your liking. It simply follows every order exactly to the letter, without any personal concern for you. It assumes that you know what is best for you, and it simply reflects that. Now, of course, the problem is that most people, completely oblivious and unconscious of this power, create all kinds of unlovely things. The wisdom teachings put it this way. They tell us as above, so below, as within, so without. Your consciousness, your mind, is the above and the within. Everything else is just the outer projection of your inner divine state. When you truly grasp this, you realize that you've never been a victim of circumstances. You've always been the author of them. So let's get to this specific technique that I often use and teach my students. And if you would like to become a student or simply need some extra help, there are some resources for you in the description of this video. So this technique will allow you to change self in a conscious matter so that the mirror of experience begins to reflect that exact desire to you. The sages and masters of old knew something that most modern manifestation teachers have watered down or simply don't grasp themselves. That an assumption of a state is not about wishful thinking, it is actually simply a divine decree. When you assume something to be true about yourself from the consciousness of I am, from the understanding that we have just discussed, you're not hoping it will happen. You're not begging, you're not pleading, you are not trying. In the very wise words of Master Yoda, do or do not. There is no try. And so the same goes here. Be or be not. There is no becoming. There is no trying to be. You either are it or you are not, internally. And so you're simply decreeing that it already is, in the realm where all things exist before they appear in physical form. If you still have some trouble understanding this, I highly recommend you watch some of the other videos in this playlist, especially the lesson on seeing the unseen. Because this is the difference between someone who occasionally gets what they want and someone who consistently lives as the conscious creator of their reality. The amateur says, I want to be wealthy, still identifying with lack. Someone who's a bit more advanced might say, I will become wealthy. Whereas the master assumes, I am wealthy. And the master lives from that consciousness simply until the outer world has no choice but to conform, and the outer world never has a choice. There is no force working against you. There is no greater power than your own awareness of being. That is, again, quite literally the name of God. And the name means nature. So think of this assumption of your new state, your assumption of wealth, health, love, Think of this assumption as putting on a new set of clothes. When you put on a nice coat, you don't spend the day wondering if you're wearing it. You simply function from the assumption that you are wearing it. The same principle here applies to any identity you wish to embody, because you are not the identity. You are simply the awareness behind the identity. So you don't hope to become it, you assume you already are it. And you live from that assumption until it becomes fact. The Bible, the most powerful book of manifestation, tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And that substance, that evidence, is your unwavering discipline to your assumption. So when you assume something with the authority of I am, you exercise that same creative power that spoke light into darkness and formed worlds from the void in Genesis. But still, people sometimes stumble here, and that is why their assumptions don't seem to work. That is why they still can't seem to manifest. And that secret is the state of naturalness. You see, the thing that separates those who consistently manifest their desires from those who struggle is naturalness. When you truly assume a new identity, it doesn't feel forced or artificial. It feels completely natural, like putting on a familiar shirt that you already own, that you've worn many times. You know this shirt, it's your best friend. And so it doesn't feel odd. You are completely accustomed to how it fits you. And this is the state the masters called the Sabbath, the rest that comes when you cease from your own works and let the divine order establish itself. And most people try to assume their desired state while feeling desperate or needy or clingy about it. They declare and they say to themselves, I am abundant, I am wealthy, I am rich, while their inner state screams the opposite. It screams scarcity. And of course, this creates a good deal of internal conflict. And as the saying goes, a house divided against itself cannot stand. If you are divided within your own being, well, guess what? You're not going to get anywhere. The universe, the divine, the subconscious mind, your own sense of self, your own sense of being, doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your state of consciousness. True assumption feels almost like you're remembering something that you temporarily forgot. Not like trying to make something happen, not like trying to convince yourself of something that is not true. You're not lying to yourself. You're not gaslighting yourself. When you assume I am loved, it should feel like coming home to yourself, not like putting on an act or that this is something you're just trying. This naturalness, when you feel it, it's a sign that your assumption has taken root in consciousness and will inevitably express itself in your world. The ancient mystics spent years learning to inhabit their desired states with complete naturalness. They understood that the moment you assume a thing and rest in that assumption without strain or effort, it must appear in your experience. It is a spiritual law and it is as reliable as gravity, if not more reliable. But so there's one final thing, one crucial element that makes the difference between temporary results and a permanent transformation. And that is experiencing from the end, living from the end. That is the ultimate secret of the masters. It was their ability to live from the end, to inhabit the consciousness of their fulfilled desire so completely that their present actions completely naturally aligned with their assumed identity. They didn't act as if they were trying to become something. They acted, again, as something who already was that thing. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "It is finished." Not that he was ending his mission, but that in consciousness, the work was already complete. Every prayer, every desire, every aspiration, any single thing that you might desire already exists in finished form in the realm of consciousness. Your job is not to create it, but to align with it by living from the end. And when you live from the end, you don't act from desperation or lack. You act from fulfillment and completion. And if you assume you are divinely provided for, you make decisions from abundance and not scarcity. And if you assume you are deeply loved, you interact with others from a place of overflow and not from neediness. Your actions become the natural expression of your assumed identity. This is why the masters seem to so effortlessly attract what they need. They aren't using techniques or trying to manipulate outcomes. They are simply being true to their divine nature and letting that nature express itself naturally through their wonderfully human experience. So the greatest spiritual awakening that you can have is not realizing that God exists, but realizing that God exists as you. The I am that you are is not a separate individual consciousness struggling to connect with divinity. It is divinity itself experiencing creation from your own unique human perspective. And every moment you have a choice. Will you identify with that limited human perspective, that ego personality that bears your name, your appearance, or will you identify with the limitless divine presence that animates your being, is timeless, ever-present, eternal, immortal? Will you speak from that smallness of personal history or from the vastness, that greatness, that largeness of eternal identity? When you truly awaken to your divine nature, you stop asking God for things and start commanding reality from the throne of your own consciousness. You stop seeking and yearning for and craving love, success, abundance, and you start being these things. You realize that everything you've ever wanted was never outside of you. It was always, quite simply, the natural expression of your own divine identity, waiting for you to claim it. The power that creates worlds is not somewhere else. It is listening to these words right now. The question is, what will you create next? What will you claim to be? Now, this video is part of a deeper exploration into these mystical teachings that reveal your true divine nature. The next lesson in this series is on screen right now. I invite you to watch it to enhance your understanding.